Listen, thank you for having me at your Rotary at your weekly meeting today. And I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I've had lots of good food in Thomasville. I remember growing up as a teenager, there was a restaurant right to the left of where the chair is. I may even called it the White House. I'm not sure. But I just remember the great stew beef and rice and chipped beef and gravy I used to have there as a teenager. So it's great to be back with you today. I'm going to give you sort of a state of the state address. And as we do that, I could get emotional. There are things happening in our world right now that are worth getting emotional about. I'll not be getting political because, number one, that violates the spirit of Rotary. And secondly, the blood that runs through me is Quaker. The Fowells are from LA, North Carolina. Those of you may be familiar with that. That stands for Lower Archdale, North Carolina. And we attend Springfield Friends, which is up in the Allen J area. And if you know anything about this Quaker religion, you know that one of the spices of the Quaker religion is to be fair and just. And what that means to you and your Rotary Club is that we don't pick and choose which laws to apply or who to apply them to. With everything that's dividing our society right now, political party, gender, and color, none of that exists at the Treasurer's Office. The only thing we focus on is GREEN, which is green. Probably about 20% of your Rotarians have some connection with these benefit plans that I'm getting ready to talk about in just a moment. Now, this is going to be a little bit like a good country music song. So we are going to build you up and talk about some things. We're going to burn you down and talk about one issue regarding health care, and then we're going to build you back up at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Number one, and lastly, I'll be getting highly mathematical. So if math makes you nauseous, you probably should zoom out now. I heard the name Mr. Barefoot earlier. I presume that's the same Chad and Paige Barefoot family that I'm most familiar with here in the Raleigh area. So if that's the case, I want to say hello to him. I've had a lot of good.
Paige didn't come by for ice cream afterwards. I said, sorry, assuming.
Yeah. I've had a lot of good experience. I've been racing motorcycles for 45 years. So you can, and riding Honda Goldwings since 1975, the first year it came out. So had a very strong connection with Cycle Center, both in Asheboro and obviously the Sing Sing family from Ray's Cycle over on the bypass. So let's talk about the AAA bond rating. Hopefully nobody in your audience wakes up and thinks about the AAA bond rating. And by the way, Jason, you're a new member. I want to congratulate you and tell you that people try to mute me in Raleigh all the time. So if they're muting you back in Davidson County, Jason, don't worry about it. It happens to me all the time in Raleigh. So the AAA bond rating is a sign of quality. It's the equivalent of a credit score for you or a sanitation grade for a restaurant. And the AAA bond rating means that when we have to borrow money for public education, public safety, public works, or public roads, then we're able to do that at the lowest possible interest rates. And that's what a AAA bond rating will do for you. The first piece of news that I'm going to bring you this morning is that, and you may not have heard this, is that one of the 21 duties and responsibilities I have as the state treasurer of North Carolina is I chair the Debt Affordability Commission. I wish the federal government had a debt affordability commission because I think we're in serious trouble as far as our national debt. But this is what we just certified as the Debt Affordability Commission. You're not going to be able to read this, obviously, but what this graph shows is that over an 8-year period of time, and you've never heard this in your lifetime, no matter how old you are, the state general obligation debt is going to fall 70%. 70. I don't think you've ever heard of a county or a city or the state or the nation where the debt actually falls. The state debt is scheduled to fall 70% over an 8-year period 5 of those years are already in the oven. And I'll report this to you, but it's important for you to realize that the credit for this goes to what has happened over the last 10 years in North Carolina. Now, I wish somebody would have told me this when I was younger, and that is, and Mr. Barefoot, be sure to tell all your grandchildren this, if you do what you're supposed to do during the semester, the pop quiz and the final exam don't count so much. And we've now faced this deadly pop quiz and final exam called COVID, which has created the highest levels of economic, food, education, and health insecurity and uncertainty in our lifetime. But I often wear the lapel pin that has NC on it, which is obviously the abbreviation for North Carolina. But for the purposes of the Thomasville Rotary Club this morning, it stands for nothing compares. I wouldn't trade places with any other state treasurer in the United States because of what has happened over the last 10 years. Balancing budgets, living within our means, building surpluses, building rainy day funds, and as you heard in my introduction, paying off nearly $2.7 billion of unemployment debt. Some of you in the audience who may have never been on unemployment in your life, they ask, why should I care about that? Because another thing that you probably don't wake up thinking about in the morning is SUTA, which is state, and FUTA, which is federal unemployment taxes. Every year that unemployment debt was outstanding, the payroll tax surcharge on every business in Thomasville, Davidson County, and the state of North Carolina, every business, every year had to pay cumulatively a higher payroll tax because that debt was outstanding. When I took over in March of 2013, we had $2.7 billion of unemployment debt within 31 months. And there's a lot of people who deserve credit for this. But over 31 months, that $2.7 billion of debt was exhausted, paid off, and $1 billion surplus was built, which ironically, on St. Patrick's Day 2 years ago, that surplus grew to $4 billion, which was desperately needed during this COVID period, when for a period of time we had 1 million North Carolinians out of work. That's the purpose of doing what you're supposed to do during the semester and building these surpluses. That's all great news. The second piece of great news is that the pension plan this year crossed $124 billion. It closed last night at about $119 billion. We're down about 4.5% for the year. And I think a lot of people would like to trade places with us who are down a lot more than that in the calendar year 2022. We don't control what the stock market does. We don't control what interest rates do, but we do control our expense ratios, and our pension plan, which has nearly 1 million participants. Now we're talking about over 1 out of every 10 adult North Carolinians at the local or the state level or the judicial level is connected with this pension plan. That this pension plan just got scored in the 0 percentile, which means there is no pension plan our size or near our size that has this run more efficiently. Now, I'm reporting this to you, but I'm pushing the credit and the power down to our investment management division, who have partnered with me over the last 5 years to cut $500 million in Wall Street fees out of our pension plan. Our 401 and 457 plan, which by the way is nearly $15 billion, has also been scored in the 0 percentile. I've talked about the Quakers, now I'll talk about the Methodists. I know that every year the Methodists try to focus on a word. The word a few years ago was context. My wife always says when you're talking in terms of millions and billions to put things in context. The pension plan by itself is nearly 5 times larger than the state budget. It's the 27th largest pool of public money in the world, and it only represents half of what we do at the Treasurer's Office. We're managing about $250 billion currently, which is 10 times larger than the state budget. So since I was with you last, that's all great news. I think I was with you in July of 2020. So that's great news. The bad news is that we continue to fight the cartelization of healthcare in North Carolina. Now, that's a very strong word. And you may recall when I joined you in June of 2020, I was just 3 months out of intensive care as one of the early contractors of COVID who had a blood ox level of 82 while I was consuming 8 liters of oxygen. Now, maybe your spouse accuses you of this, but my wife Cynthia sometimes accuses me of talking as if I'm a doctor. My initials are Dr. Fowell, so that's about as close as I'm ever going to get to being a doctor. But I do know enough, as many of your Rotarians know, that when your blood ox level is 82, while you're consuming 8 liters of oxygen, you're really not long for this world. So when I talk about the cartelization of healthcare, obviously I'm not talking about the people who actually do the work in healthcare. I'm talking about the multi-million-dollar executives who represent these multi-billion-dollar corporations who disguise themselves as nonprofits, meaning that they don't pay sales tax, they don't pay income tax, and they don't pay property tax. Those are the 3 taxes that drive the things that are important to the Thomasville Rotary Club, period. It's property taxes, sales taxes, and income taxes that drive the things that your group cares about: public education, public safety, public works, and public roads. So as we were going through this, and this is new information since I was with you in 2020, we always talk about the charity care. Well, I'm a former garbage collector and a motorcycle mechanic there in Winston-Salem, and I'm just used to getting my arms around things. So we took them at their word. So Johns Hopkins University, and you can read this at the Treasurer's website, Johns Hopkins University took the data from our health plan and determined that these non-corporations that are disguising themselves as nonprofits are receiving nearly $2 billion in tax benefit and only offering a few $100 million worth of charity care. The charity care and the tax benefit are supposed to be equal. That's why it was set up 50 or 60 years ago. Obviously, that's changed. So healthcare now controls North Carolina, and Big Wall Street now controls healthcare. But it gets even worse. We got a peer review done of this charity care report by Johns Hopkins, and we asked Rice University to do a peer review. And that peer review demonstrates that there's nearly $175 million worth of individuals in North Carolina who possibly are having their credit rating destroyed while we're sitting here right now because they consumed a product they would rather not consume, which is healthcare, because that would mean they weren't sick. When they tried to inquire what it cost, they were told it's none of your business. And then when they didn't pay for what they didn't want to consume, then they're having their credit rating destroyed. Many, tens of millions of dollars worth of those types of bills in North Carolina. Those people should have been provided charity care. So why do I say that they weren't told what it cost? Because many of you remember me showing you this back in June of 2020, when I attempted as the keeper of the public purse and the state treasurer of North Carolina to figure out what we're paying for health care on behalf of those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. This is what was returned to me by UNC Healthcare as the price list. Let me do that again. Every single page was completely blacked out. This is an industry that operates in secrecy. They don't want people to know what things cost. So when I was growing up in Winston-Salem, I was poor in resource and rich in opportunity. This is where I could get a little emotional. For many citizens across North Carolina, this old term that we've heard all of our lives, making ends meet, ends are never going to meet. Because for most citizens, they are one medical experience away from ends never meeting. One medical bill, one split bill, one out-of-network bill, and one surprise bill. This is what is happening right now. And what's really happening is we're putting people in a position that they can't see themselves out of their poverty. When you can't see yourselves out of your poverty as a society, you're finished. And people cannot see themselves out of their poverty because of things associated with healthcare billing. Healthcare bills have weaponized the credit scores of the people of this state. Credit scores now determine what you pay for this. They determine what you pay for the insurance agents in the Rotary Club for your basic liability insurance on your vehicle. They determine whether you get the benefit of the doubt when you want to rent an apartment. And they obviously determine what interest rate you pay when you're wanting to build equity in your life by buying a home. Credit scores are being weaponized because of medical billing. So after I was not long for this world in March of 20, last year I went in and had to get a MRI or a ultrasound with contrast of my chest. I was there 8 minutes. It cost $6,000 for 8 minutes. And when I was at that facility, I paid $500 point of sale that ran through the state health plan. But then I purposely, and hear me clearly, I purposely have put myself in collections, because until you stand in a bread line, you don't know what it's like to be in a bread line. I wanted to see exactly how the people of the state are treated when they don't pay these medical bills. And this is my medical collection. This is one of my notices right here. My point is that last week I got 2 phone calls. This week I've already gotten 2 text messages. By the time I get back to Winston-Salem on Friday, I'll have 2 pieces of mail. The fact is that I want to actually experience, because I don't say this in a braggy way, as my grandfather would say. I'm saying this because credit scores don't matter to me like they did when I was trying to see myself out of poverty. And I'm now experiencing what the average citizen is experiencing with things associated with medical billing. I will tell you as I close on this particular subject, this is very important to me. It's important to me because I have the responsibility to lower healthcare costs for those that teach, protect, and serve. We have done a fantastic job that many of you are already aware of with our Medicare Advantage product. Those over the age of 65, I'll be there next year. We now have 0 premium for our Medicare Advantage healthcare retirees. No cost to the taxpayer, no cost to the state health plan. We just renegotiated our pharmacy benefit contract, $750 million of savings. The one I previously mentioned is $1 billion in savings. All this matters because when I was sworn in as the state treasurer and the keeper of the public purse, I inherited a $34 billion unfunded healthcare liability because no money was ever put aside for this purpose. So as I close and start to take questions, I'll mention a couple of more things to you. We're in the process of dechartering some cities. You've probably heard about East Laurinburg. East Laurinburg is to the east of you and has not consistently produced an audit in 10 years. The state auditor went into East Laurinburg as well as some other cities and actually found checks made out to petty cash where the person who signed the front of the check may have known or been related to the person who signed the back of the check. There's no petty cash account in these city journals. There was an election on East Laurinburg last year. People ask me why I carry this stuff around. It's because I say things you wouldn't believe unless I showed it to you. This is the actual ballot from East Laurinburg. There are 4 city council slots and 1 mayor. There's only 1 name on this ballot. Only 1 name on this ballot, not per slot. 1 name, period. And that person lost due to a write-in candidate who got 2 votes. My point of saying this to you is that we have got to work harder, especially with our small towns and counties, to make sure they have the governance, the transparency, and the competency to actually run their governments. Because I don't know what the buying habits of all the lower and fixed income people of this state are, but I can tell you that proportionally, the property taxes are probably the largest tax expense. They need for that money to be going toward this essential services. Now, the auditor, the state auditor, Beth Wood, which I recommend you inviting to your group sometime, the state auditor just got through doing an audit of Spring Lake. The finance officer had written checks totaling $500,000. Some of the checks to a nursing home for her loved ones that even had the room number on the memo line. So if you want to know why I talk the way I do and say the things I do, it's because this is serious business. There are 35 vehicles missing in Spring Lake, Little Spring Lake, located between Fort Bragg, Fayetteville, and Pinehurst. This is the kind of things that we're finding across North Carolina in some of our local governments. And I will say this, and I say it in front of her, so now I'll say it when she's not around. Auditor Beth Wood and I serve on several committees together, including the Local Government Commission, obviously the Council of State. And when I'm the calm one in the room, somebody's having a bad day because state, I'm glad you're getting the treasurer humor. So anyway, this is very serious business. As we close for question, Mr. President, I want to make sure I mention nccash.com. There are 68 Rotary clubs across North Carolina that literally have money sitting at nccash.com. You have a great treasurer there because there's no money sitting at nccash.com for the Thomasville Rotary Club. But I can guarantee you that at least a quarter of the people sitting in that room right now have something sitting at nccash.com. Check your name, maiden name, kids' names, parents' names, church name. The High Times baseball team had $10,000 sitting at nccash.com. We've broken all records. We sent out $75 million last year. And if you think it's a gimmick, you just need to understand it's where somebody tried to mail you a check that you did not get. We just found $200,000 for a lady who was in a county north of where you are, who was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. No one had ever told her. The Civil Rights Museum of Greensboro just got $1,000. They had made a deposit on a phone system. They did not buy the phone system, and then they changed their P.O. box, and the money got sent to the treasurer's office. So just another valuable reason to attend these meetings and come to the Thomasville Rotary Club is to go to nccash.com. I hope that if you find something there that you'll tithe 10% of that back to the Happy Bucks. And before I take questions, I just want to thank all of you for being Rotarians. Mr. Barefoot's children and grandchildren have been in my home before, and as soon as you walk in the den, there's a Paul Harris Award sitting there that was posthumously awarded to our son over 20 years ago, who was killed at the age of 7. So for all of you Paul Harris recipients, I applaud your accomplishment. And I just want to tell you that if every elected official in this state and this country would just adopt the 4-way test and the motto of service above self, it's unimaginable what our society could accomplish. With that, I'll be glad to take any question you might have.
Treasurer Fowell, thank you for that. I'm gonna show you this room because they look a lot better than I do. So y'all say, hey, if you got any questions, raise your hand too. Can you see them? I don't know if our internet connection went bad or not. Everybody say anything. Can you still hear us, Treasurer Fowell?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Anybody have any questions? You must have done an excellent job because it doesn't look like there's any questions. I do have one. Yes, Mr. Bowers, can you?
Treasurer Fowell, all those collection cases with the medical providers, corporate medical providers, is the Attorney General's office doing any kind of steps or measures for those like consumer complaints for the folks dealing with those collection practices?
A great question. I can't answer what the Attorney General's office is doing on this matter. I can tell you that I'm the keeper of the public purse, and especially as it relates to the healthcare cartel, I've also had to be the protector of the consumer. The fact is the cartel is very, very strong. They control the supply of healthcare through something called certificate of need, which, by the way, if you pronounce that, even in Davidson County, it's pronounced con, C-O-N. They control the supply of healthcare. They control the quality of healthcare. They control the access to healthcare. They control the price of healthcare. And then, of course, they control whether they want to destroy your credit or not if you don't pay your bill. It's a serious issue.
Any other questions? Kyle's, hold on, Peyton, sorry.
I was just very interested in the drug interdiction money that in billions of dollars from Carolina, coast, and everywhere else. What is done with that after it is no longer evidence of the case?
Could you hear that, Treasurer?
No.
You were asking about drug intervention money and what is done with money after there's,
No longer in the court system.
it's no longer in the court system
Yeah, I mean, it's over.
and the case is over. Okay.
$50 million worth of
Does that
cocaine money.
make sense, Treasurer?
I think so. I think he was asking about drug intervention money, and a lot of that is recaptured back in the school system, reclaimed. But if somebody will send me an email, I will get somebody that's a lot smarter than I am on this topic to get you the correct answer. You know, the last thing we need right now is we need public officials answering questions where they don't know what the hell the answer is supposed to be. And this would be one of those, but it's a great question. It deserves a great answer. If somebody will just send us an email, I'll respond back to it.
Thank you. Yeah, he said thank you. Treasurer Kyle Wallace said thank you. Peyton, do you have another?
I just wanted to say I had $21 in the Etsy cash thing, so.
Oh, did you just now find it?
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Treasurer?
How much?
$21. So one of our locally elected officials on the council just got $21 that she's going to put towards good use here in Thomasville.
I think the city of Thomasville may have money there.
Oh. I bet you we're going to find out. Well, for sake of time, Treasurer, thank you so much for joining us again. You mentioned Auditor Wood. We have had her here. That was a lot of fun too. So maybe we'll have her back. But thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for what you've done, especially during some unprecedented times with some unprecedented challenges. And all the information you shared with us today, very valuable. You're welcome to join us here if you're ever in the Thomasville area Wednesday at lunch. Please join us. But thank you so much.